Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar introducing our much anticipated Everybody Moves Resource Hub. My name is Rita Koutsoudiimos, and I'm the Executive Director of the BC Alliance for Healthy Living. I'd like to start by respectfully acknowledging that I'm joining you today from the traditional unceded territories of the Squamish and Seychelles, which are beautiful lands where I have the privilege to live, work, and play. Of course, with the power of Zoom, we are all attending from different parts of the province. And I invite you all to take a moment to reflect on the land where you live and to acknowledge the Indigenous peoples whose historical relationships with the land continues to this day. So today we are very excited to show everyone our new Everybody Moves Resource Hub. But before we get into it, I'll just go over a few housekeeping items. If you're having trouble hearing, just try turning up the volume on your phone or computer. And we really want to get your input. So we'll be asking you to use the control panel on the bottom of your screen. If you could just type in the questions into the Q&A box as you think of them, and then we'll go through those questions at the end of the presentation. We'll answer as many questions as we have time for, but if we miss any, we'll be sure to send out a post-event email with the missed questions. We will be recording the webinar today and posting it up on our YouTube channel. The link to the recorded webinar will also be posted on our website, and we'll go out through Everybody Moves and our BCAHL and webinar newsletters, as well as through our social media channel. So there's an opportunity to catch up if you miss something. And after the webinar, we'll follow up with a very short survey. I hope you'll respond to it, as it helps us to learn from these events what's working and what we can do better for next time. So before we get started, we'd like to do a poll to see who's here with us today. And just wanted to get a sense of what your professional or personal interest is in the topic today. Are you a coach or activity program leader? Are you a sport or recreation administrator? Are you joining because you're primarily interested in inclusion and equity or in physical activity promotion? Is research something that you're interested in, or policy, or maybe it's something completely different, or all of the above? But if you fall into more than one category, then just choose the one that best indicates why you're joining us today. So we'll give you a minute. All right, so we've got a lot of sport or recreation administrators and a lot of physical activity promotion folks. That's fantastic. That's great. Well, thanks very much. And I think you'll be very interested in the resource, because that's what we're all about. So we know that physical activity is essential for one's health, and yet many British Columbians face invisible and visible barriers to regular activity. For example, youths who identify as lesbian, gay, and bisexual are half as likely to play coach sports compared to youths who identify as straight. 90% of older adults are sedentary for most of the day, and 50% of adults living with disabilities get no aerobic physical activity. These numbers are astounding and concerning. After all, people who don't engage in physical activity are much more likely to have increased mental and emotional health issues, and are at a higher risk of developing chronic diseases, including cancer, diabetes, stroke, and arthritis. So BC clearly needs solutions to get us all moving, and the Everybody Moves Resource Hub is part of the solution. So before we get into the Everybody Moves Resource Hub, I'm going to give you a brief summary of how it came to be and how the BC Alliance for Healthy Living and the Physical Activity for Health Collaborative are involved. After that, we'll have Selena, our Manager of Communications and Project, will give us a tour of the hub and show us how to submit a resource. And lastly, we'll have the question period where we'll answer attendees' questions to take this and to make this as smooth as possible, please post your questions in the Q&A. So the BC Alliance for Healthy Living facilitates the Physical Activity for Health Collaborative, which is a large network of organizations that are involved in the advancement of health and physical activity. The collaborative is made up of leaders in physical activity and health, including academics from UVic, from UBC, and University of Northern BC, as well as the provincial health authorities, local government, and major provincial organizations that focus on sport and recreation, health and wellness. So you can see the great brain trust we have right there up on the screen. There's the logos of all of our collaborative. And the collaborative works together with the Ministry of Health to implement the provincial physical activity strategy, which is really focused on getting more people moving more often. And as the collaborative was working together and looking at what could we do as a collaborative, we wanted to focus on an area where we could get more people moving more often. So we looked at the data on physical activity and identified an equity gap between who's active and who's not active. We looked at ways to help recreation and sport readers understand in practical terms how to improve equity and how to make programs and facilities more inclusive and equitable. And after a province-wide consultation and a needs assessment, which was led by Krista Costas, who I see is inviting us here today, joining us here today, let me say, we decided to take the resources that have already been created around equitable access to inclusive physical activity and bring them together in one place for sport and recreation leaders. And this is essentially how the Everybody Moves Resource Hub came together. And so it's thanks to all of the brains with that, the Physical Activity Collaborative and their shared energy investment that we're so excited to be introducing you to this great product today. And I'm going to pass it over to Selena now, who's been overseeing the development and execution of the Everybody Moves Resource Hub to take us through it. Over to you, Selena.
All right, thank you so much, Rita. So as Rita mentioned, my name's Selena. I'm a Manager of Communications and Projects, and I've been largely overseeing the development and execution of the Everybody Moves Hub. So now I'm going to give everyone a very brief tour, and in order to do that, I'm just going to exit out of this presentation and open my window. So as you can see, getting to the Everybody Moves Hub is very simple. We're just at everybodymoveshub.ca. And once you enter the platform, you can see that it's very clear and very simple because we really want to make this as easy to use as possible. So there's only a few links at the top, and right at the home page, it's also the resource page. So we'll just scroll down, and as you get further to the middle of the page, you'll see right here is our major search bar. Here you can filter your search by the subject, and subject can include categories such as early years, physical literacy, low income, mental health and wellness, and then you can also filter through types of resource. So that can include things like application, brochures, course, exercise, and so on. So for instance, let's say I'm a recreation leader, and as the poll showed, there's a lot of recreation leaders attending today's webinar, and I want to put up infographics on people with disabilities for staff and volunteers. So here I can just check off people with disabilities and infographic, and then we'll just press search and see what comes up. So just scrolling down here now for the search results. Here we can see right after the search bar are all of these different results, and they're just organized through this card view. So here we can see some ideas on how to adapt activities, outcomes of inclusive sport, and inclusion, the anatomy of best practices. Why does inclusion matter? And let's just take a closer look at one of the resources. Let's go to Outcomes of Inclusive Sport. So here I can just click on the card, and right away it'll take me to this page with more information in regards to the resource, see if it's a good fit for your organization. And here we'll just see the title of the resource. Here is a direct link to the resource. So if I click it, I will open up directly to the resource. And here we can see outcomes of inclusive sport, and it can create unity, it can defy expectations, make connections, and so on. So this is essentially a poster that if I thought this would be useful for my recreation center as a rec leader, I could just print it or share it with my team. And now just going back to the summary page, at the bottom here is an abstract of the resource that gives a brief summary and just letting me know if this could potentially be something useful for me, and also links me directly to the organizations that were involved in creating this resource. And then I can also share this on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, or an email. And at the bottom, we can see the different resource topics and types that are tagged with the outcomes of inclusive sport. So if maybe I want to look for something similar, I can click on the link accessibility. And then I will come up with this entire list of resources here. Yeah, and as you can see, I'll just scroll to the bottom. There are quite a few pages worth of resources that are tagged under accessibility, so you can definitely take your time to explore. And so just going back to the main resource page, just going to scroll up and just go back to resources. So of course, going back to this search bar, we do encourage you to use either the subject types or the types of resource to filter your results, but maybe instead you have a keyword in mind. So let's say, for example, I want to find BIPOC resources or Black, Indigenous, People of Color resources, and I can't find the word in either of these filters. So I can just literally type it in here and search. And here, again, scrolling down, I can find all of these resources that are tagged under BIPOC. And again, let's just take a closer look at one of them. Let's check out, let's go further down. You can see some from BC RPA, from the City for Women Initiative. Let's check out this one, the Let's Talk Racism and Health Equity. So again, here we see a direct link to the resource, and it'll open up to a page with the National Collaborating Center for Determinants of Health. And here I can see the full resource. Going back to the page again, the abstract, link to the main source, social media shares, and other related tags. So now we've essentially finished covering how to use the search tool. And as you can see, it is quite simple and intuitive. We've intentionally built it that way just so that it's as easy to use as possible. And here I'm just going to pause a bit and see if maybe we have any questions specifically for the search tool.
So Lynn, I'm just looking and it doesn't look like we have any questions. So why don't you carry on and demonstrate the assessment form, and then we can see if there's any questions at the end.
All right, awesome. So I'm glad to hear that it's going about more clearly, and of course we can answer more in the end too. So one of the key resources we provide for people who will be using the hub is an assessment to determine how inclusive your organization is and where to start taking action. So you can find the assessment on the main page right above the search engine. So it's right over here, ready for change. Fill out this questionnaire to find out how inclusive your organization is and where to start taking action. So right when I click it, it will bring me to this page. And as you can see from this environmental scan checklist, there's a section for political structures, and under this it has points such as strategic priorities, identify inclusion of marginalized populations, training in equity and inclusion, and then there's a section for operations under which we can see communications reach diversity of residents with inclusive images and messaging. And then participation and partnership structures and mechanism. It can have things such as awards for community leaders and organizations promoting equity and inclusion. And under human resources, we can see, let's say, training in equity and inclusion for staff, and a few sections for others, just so that your organization can fill it in it yourself. And at the very bottom of the checklist is a guide of how to score yourself or your organization with a given point system. So as you can see, if you scored fewer than 19 points, you need to get cracking and study what other cities are doing. And you're on the right track if you score between 20 and 34 points. And if you score between 35 and 50, congratulations. So essentially, this checklist is for organizations to use to internally check their progress on building capacity for inclusive and accessible physical activity and figure out any gaps. That said, I do want to note that this assessment resource was originally intended for a municipal audience. So your organization may be structured differently. So definitely consider the assessment more of as a guide and use the questions that are more relevant for your organization. And the reason we have the assessment here is because it's a very great comprehensive tool. And maybe after taking this assessment, your organization determines that perhaps we're lacking in equity and inclusion training for staff. And then as a solution, we just go back to the Everybody Moves hub, and we can then type in here, I want something on equity. So you just look it up, search. And here I can see, oh, there are some training. So Aboriginal Cultural Relations module, equity lens snapshot, and so on. And an all youth matter training, maybe I click onto this. And here I can see it's a inclusion training for youths led by Via Sport. And again, I can just click on the resource directly. Whoops, over here, and just learn more about it, see if it is the right resource for our organization. And so after using the hub, just going back here, we also invite you to take our survey. So again, just going back to the main page, you can just click the logo here, resources, as it leads to the same page. And right underneath the assessment button is the survey button. So you can just see here, help us improve. And thank you for checking out Everybody Moves. After using our search tool, it'll only take 5 more minutes to participate in a quick survey to help us improve the experience with the hub. And you could be entered for a draw for a $50 Visa gift card, which is pretty exciting. And this is just what the survey looks like. So it'll just have you select the option that describes you best, and then please indicate the extent of your inclusion knowledge, skills, and confidence before visiting Everybody Moves. And then there are a few more pages, but overall it's quite simple. And going back, and another thing that we offer is perhaps after using the hub, you realize there's a resource your organization has that could benefit users of the hub, and the hub can also help promote your organization's resource. So if you want to submit a resource, the way you do that is just at the very top of the page. On this corner, there's a submit a resource page. So when you click that, it'll open up to this page. And we would require some contact information and details about the resource. And here I'll say topic and resource type, and this is just to help us organize according to the filter list in the beginning. So you can choose more than one topic, for instance, right? Okay, and then That said, you would have to submit each resource separately, even if it's from the same organization, because this form is to submit one resource each time. Also, we encourage you to submit a resource even if you're not directly connected with the organization where the resource is at, because we can try connecting with the other organizations ourselves. Because essentially, our goal for the Hub is to house as many resources on inclusivity and accessibility within physical activity as possible. So as the Everybody Moves Hub is a project of the Physical Activity for Health Collaborative, we also have a blog area. So just going up, it's just this link right over here. So once you click it, you'll arrive at this page. We also have a blog area that acts as a platform for collaborative members to share news and updates, and we'll also be sharing updates on the Everybody Moves Hub. So right now we just have our introductory launch article, but very soon we'll have more published articles in this blog area. And if you want to stay updated with the Hub, you can be sure to subscribe to our newsletter. And to subscribe, the link is just at the bottom, at the footer. So right over here, subscribe to our newsletter. And when you click on the sign up form, it'll just lead you to this page. And here you can just add in your personal information. And if you want to subscribe to the Everybody Moves newsletter, it's right over here. If you want more webinar updates, click this. If you want to learn more about the BC Alliance for Healthy Living, you can click this as well. And I am also just going to open back up the PowerPoint so I can show you all of our other ways to stay connected with us. So here, you can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn under BC Healthy Living or BC Alliance for Healthy Living. And here is where you can also stay connected on the Everybody Moves Hub. We also have a podcast series called The Balance by the BC Alliance for Healthy Living, which you can find on Spotify, Apple, and iTunes. And on the podcast, you can listen to interviews that are exclusively recorded to focus on physical activity and accessibility and inclusion. We interview major physical activity leaders, such as the Executive Director of the BC Wheelchair Basketball Society, Sean Blythe, and the Director of Research and Social Innovation at Via Sport, Shauna Lawson. And those episodes focused on the Hub will be launching in the following months. So if you subscribe to our newsletter, and this is just the direct link if you want it to, it can keep you informed. Yeah, so now I'm just going to move it on to Rita to moderate and see if we have any questions now.
Great, thanks so much, Selena. So we've got a few questions that have come in. And Derek asks, are the resources strictly from Canada or are they international?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. Right now, all of our resources are from Canada. From my memory of the Hub, but if we find a resource that is open and informative and accessible to like the general population, I think we're okay with having that in the Hub too, because as we mentioned before, we want to make this Hub like a one-stop shop for all physical activity and rec leaders. And so maybe it's from the States, but talks about having more accessible resources for BIPOC, and it can be determined for like every different city or town, then we would add that in as well.
Great, thanks. And Nancy asks, with the assessment tool, how is the list of populations on the right side of the question to be used? So how do you, I think, you know, that this is a good question, is how do you integrate that assessment tool and then how you follow up and use the Everybody Moves Hub?
So, sorry, I just want to make sure I understand the question. Can you repeat that?
She asked, with the assessment tool, how is the list of populations on the right side of the question to be used? So how do you integrate the assessment tool to using the resource hub?
Oh, okay, I see. So, yeah, that's a really good question. Thanks for asking. So, well, I think I'm just going to give like a very specific example so it can be easier to understand. So let's say after doing this assessment tool and then after we've calculated the scores, we've determined that, for example, the communications to reach diversity of residents with inclusive images and messaging, let's say we determine that that's largely lacking in the organization, but it's something that we know we can apply. So once we realize that, okay, maybe the status is no, and it's a high priority for us, and after looking at everything else, we decide to focus on this first. So once we realize this, we can just go back to the hub, go to the resources, and then maybe the type of resource that we want is perhaps best practices, or let's see, maybe more infographics, and sort of just get a gauge of what might be out there for us to improve our communications. So once I've clicked those off, I can scroll down, and here I can see a bunch of different infographics, and maybe the organization wants to just put those up in the rec center to help people, or perhaps we want to have like a better internal understanding of racism and health equity, and then we have this resource right here. So this assessment tool essentially just helps figure out all those gaps, and then it's after using the tool, it's up to like your internal organization's process to determine what a resource would work best to help you improve, or maybe the resource hub, once you look through the whole list of what's been searched for, kind of sparks some ideas of what direction we can start taking, and what could essentially help us further down the road.
That's great.
Yeah.
Good, thank you. Now, does anyone else have any other questions? Because that seems to be our questions for the day. So I invite anyone else to pipe up and plug in your questions. And I'll just say that, you know, for us at the Alliance, it's just been such a pleasure working with all of the members of the Physical Activity for Health Collaborative. And it really, you know, I think it really demonstrates a real commitment to physical activity, that the collaborative really wanted to focus in on an area around who's not being active and develop a really practical tool. And so I really hope that this is going to be a practical tool for practitioners and for administrators and for folks who are really involved in the promotion of physical activity. And it's just such a great group of people to work with. And, you know, it's really wonderful for us to see something concrete come out of this group. So Sonia Pickering says, not a question, but a comment. This is a fantastic tool, especially the resources and links. Thank you. Well, thank you, Sonia. I hope that you'll find it useful. Brianna says, great resource. Thanks for sharing. What's the cost of accessing the hub? Well, it's completely free. We're doing this just because we want more people to be more active more of the time. So, and certainly we want to bridge those gaps and you know, create a space where everybody gets to play, everybody gets to be active. And yeah, we're getting lots of kudos, so thank you. And I'll just say thanks to Selena, who's done a fantastic job in making this come to life. So that's great. Well, thank you, and we really do appreciate the positive feedback, because we're really excited about it, and we really hope that it will help bridge the gap. And so, if that is the end of the questions, then I'm just going to wrap it up and thank everyone for attending the webinar to learn more about the Everybody Moves Resource Hub. We've been working on this for quite a while now, from the scoping and needs assessment to the inputting of all the resources and working with the web provider. So we hope that you will find it useful and that you'll share it with others too, because if you within your circle of influence have the power to reach and touch lots of other people. So we hope that you can help us get it out there. That's how it's going to be successful and effective. So this webinar, as we mentioned before, is recorded. We'll be posting it up on our website and with a link through our newsletters and through our social media channels. For any further questions related to the Hub, please contact us at move@bchealthyliving.ca, and we'll be following up with that short survey and hope that you'll help us out by filling that in so that we can learn from this event. And we hope that you all find a moment to get active today. Give yourself permission to go outside and take a walk or do something fun, do a little dance party in the kitchen, but do be active and have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.